Alright, so we spent a little time reviewing our double shifters, our price ceilings and floors, consumer and producer surplus. And the reason we do that is because you got to have a pretty solid handle on those topics, especially producer and consumer surplus and dead weight loss, when we talk about these next upcoming topics, elasticity and taxation. So we're going to talk about elasticity today. And if you think about so if you think about something that has elasticity or something that is elastic, it's kind of stretchy, it's flexible. Well, when we're looking at elasticity, we're seeing how flexible certain products are when we compare certain things. So I have two products for you. I have insulin and I have apples here. Insulin, apples. I underline for effect. Now, let's make sure that we all understand apples are tasty, delicious fruits, and insulin is not something that you per se eat, but something that if you're diabetic you need to keep yourself alive. It helps regulate your blood sugar because your body is not able to do that. So tasty, delicious fruit, medicine that keeps you alive. Now the question is, what happens when the price of these two products change? What's the difference? And think about your behaviors surrounding these products. How might they change if the price of them change? Think for a second. I'll take a drink of water. Now, well, if the price of my apples changes, let's imagine the price changed dramatically. Let's say the price doubled for an apple. Let's say it went from $1 to $2, and let's say insulin went from, I don't know how much insulin costs. I'm not diabetic, so I've never bought it. Let's say it goes from $10 to $20. So big jumps, 100% increases. What's going to happen to the behaviors here? Well, hopefully we kind of realize that, if I have to pay double for my apples, I'm probably going to go elsewhere. I'm going to get like bananas or something. I'm going to get my tasty, delicious fruit product in another color or another form. Maybe I have a pineapple instead, or raspberries. Raspberries are delicious. But insulin, on the other hand, if insulin doubles in price, I don't have a lot of other places to go. Like, I have to buy insulin. If I don't buy insulin, I don't live. Apples have lots of substitutes. Insulin, the substitute for insulin is like death. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like a pretty crummy substitute. So I'll pay whatever for insulin. But apples, I may respond a little differently. I may have a little bit more, let's say, elastic behavior when it comes to the apples changing in price. I'll be more flexible. Whereas insulin, I don't have that luxury. Now, this is going to be really important because the demand curve for insulin will look different than the demand curve for apples. And think about if you can figure out how or why it'll look different. But let me show you this here. So I should say this is the price elasticity of demand here, or PED, because there are two other types of elasticity that we'll look at, but we're going to look at the price elasticity of demand, where we're going to compare the relationship between price and quantity demanded. So, and we're going to express these in percentages. At some point, we will express them in percentages. But there's going to be two tests to figure out what kind of product you're dealing with, what type of elasticity you've got. But the first thing we got to do is imagine for me, if the price of insulin changes, let's say dramatically, again, a huge change in insulin price, what's going to happen to the change in the quantity demand? We just talked about it. It's going to stay pretty constant because you need it, right? You need insulin. But if the price of apples changes, what's going to happen to your quantity demanded? Well, it's going to change, and pretty dramatically. And one of the reasons we said is there's lots of substitutes. for apples, whereas there's not nearly as many substitutes for insulin. So this relationship here, where when the price changes and your quantity demanded stays pretty constant, insulin is known as an inelastic good, because when the price changes, your quantity demanded does not. It's not very flexible, you could think of. This quantity demanded is not very flexible, even though the price is changing. This is not. Whereas apples, I think I kind of alluded to this on the last slide, are elastic. Your behavior will change when the price of an apple changes. Now the question is, again, how will this make their demand curves look? Well, you have price and quantity here, and I'm going to pause for 1 second. Alright, so I just added a generic demand curve down here so that we can kind of see here. And then we'll compare our insulin one and our apples one. So if the price changes, just say it changes a whole lot. Say it goes from like way up here, something up here, to like way down here somewhere. So like somewhere like this. Well, with insulin, when our price changes, we would expect our quantity demanded to stay pretty constant. So but if you notice here, did our quantity demanded stay constant? It looked like it changed quite a bit here. So insulin is going to be like really steep, like that. And that's going to be the demand curve for insulin. Because notice, the price goes from like way up here to way down here. Price changed a bunch, but your quantity, I don't even know if I can draw this. Yeah, I did it. Price hardly changed at all, right? I mean, it's like, that's really small. But your apples, we expect the quantity demanded to change even more than this. So what do we need to do to make it for apples? We got to make it like really mellow. It's got to be like, oh, that was awful. Let's say like that. And this will be your demand curve. So your price, so again, imagine your price is here. The price went down. And it didn't go down very much, right? The price is like a little tiny sliver. But notice what happened to your quantity. Your quantity changed dramatically here. So here the price has very, very big influences on your quantity demanded. But here, price change has very, very small changes. So this is the idea of elasticity. And we're going to look at how we can measure it in just a second. But before we do that, before we get into the math of it, there's just going to be some general rules that I'm going to give you in the next slide. And you can follow along on your worksheet. I believe it's page number 2. All right?